for an infra company like Coco, correct? And Coco is focused on legal tech, and we have different use cases, and sometimes you may have data privacy restrictions from utilizing data. And if you look at all the LLMs right now, correct, they're very focused on the US as a law, correct? Because if you want India specific stuff, correct, you have to create those data sets yourself. And India is so unique that in legal, correct, as an example, it uses the US templates, it uses the UK templates, it uses India templates, all the common law stuff, correct? But if you want to create India specific templates, it's only when if you ask a human to do it, a lawyer to do it today, let's say to draft an agreement, they have an inherent bias to it because they're only trained on documents outside of India, correct? So the endeavor is to remove the bias in some of the LLMs that we have, correct? An example of bias is using English to do this podcast. We could have done it in any other Indian language, which we know, correct? But so those kind of bias is coming. Okay. So to remove that and clean all of these things take a lot of time, effort, energy, and it's not that you can simply have data, put it together, and do a chatbot. You've seen those days where it gives you like rubbish results. Also, isn't it good? Oh yeah. And when you do it, there's a requirement. We also have some patent technology where it's not necessary to always train, but I won't get into very big details on that. It is, of course, our internal IP for all of these things as well. But suffice it to say that, if you're putting through all of these different bits and pieces, you're going to consume a lot of power. You're going to consume a lot of computing data. And on private cloud, correct? On public cloud, you will burn a lot of these things. And I don't know how many people are successful in getting you'll still get a Tesla T4. You'll never get a H100 and beyond, isn't it? You will not get an allocation. You'll simply not get an allocation. And also, if you're looking at India, correct, the concept is all about services. It's never been about products and innovation. Correct. People underestimate, it's like trying to get a chartered accountant, correct? You will get one, sorry for all due disclaimers on this, correct? You will get somebody depending on how much you pay, and you'll get, it's like across the spectrum. And this is true of lawyers as well, and true. But India is such a services denominated economy, correct? That the innovation piece and the ability to actually do deep research and do deep things is underestimated, correct? So, we've got a new product on the hardware side called Q Code, correct? I think about 2 years back, correct, Guru, or about a year and a half back, we started experimenting with edge devices, perfected it, correct? It was very difficult to get. We were probably the first to get, and we told NVIDIA about it, saying that, we are running, actual LLMs on edge devices, which we had a very specific use case. I don't want to get into that, but it was possible to run tasks on. And at that point in time, NVIDIA was the only company that made a GPU on an edge device, right? So available. So, and still does. It's like many people say, I run it on Raspberry Pi. I'm like, go ahead, try, see what you can, like 2 tokens a second, you'll be happy, correct? So, but that it's an edge device is not a Raspberry Pi, correct? So, and an edge device needs to have certain amount of output capacity to be able to run some of these things as well. And it needs to take into account concurrency, network availability, and so many other things as well, right? Sorry, I'm getting a little technical here, but that's how we started, correct? And the damn thing would consume so much power also. It's not that an edge device, is so energy efficient and things. It's like running an old style filament light bulb at 200 watts, correct? So something like that. So, and that can consume a lot of power very, very quickly. And the devices get hot because it's not necessary that you have cooling systems you run it in a place in summer in India without adequate cooling, that thing will just smoke, correct? So after some time. So we've gone through all of I've burned a few things also, isn't it? So it's happened as well. And why I mention this is when QCode is a data center, it's a micro data center where you can run your applications and inference tasks very, very quickly, correct? Because it's made for application and you know what the output levels look like, and it can scale to a certain number of users and things like that. And it has certain power capacity and tier one networks associated with it. It is not meant to become like a huge data center because in India, people, the moment you go to a very huge data center, correct, and the problem becomes one of cooling, of management, of power, and then tier four data centers. You need to have at least two power sources. In India, unless you are in what do you call as the Gadibaga, which is a border area, correct? You will not have power supply from two discoms, correct? Electricity boards. Most states in India have only one discom, correct? So where will you get the second discom for? Right. The second discom is the sun, correct? So and that's also limited to approximately 12 hours a day. And it's never going to run at like a gigawatt capacity and all that. Correct? It's not going to happen. So you have to do, I think in most places, you can do like a tier two. There are different tiers of data centers, not that it's bad or whatever. You'll have a tier two or a tier T capability as well, correct? And a tier three is quite adequate, to be able to run what you require. You don't necessarily need to pay for hundreds of acres and of to run like cutting. You need micro data centers, correct?
Yeah. In addition to it, I just also want to add that we want to charge our customers in rupees instead of dollars,
Exactly.
right?
Correct.
If you look at Azure or AWS or any other cloud, yeah, so you pay them in dollars, but then those charges have to be transferred to the customers.
Yeah, that's something. I think you're right, Guru, isn't it? It's a joke, right? People sitting in the next row in Bangalore charge you in dollars. That's correct. Which we think is a joke. People buy it also, right? So yesterday I was talking to someone in Chennai, correct? Hey, I'm very sitting in Madras and trying to sort of like charge me in dollars, correct? What's the fun, correct? You have just adopted some, and if you look at the USDT to INR, it's indicating a 92.
Yeah.
It soon becomes unaffordable in India.
Correct.
And it's a services economy. How many people actually innovate, bro, that you need such huge data centers?
Right.
Now you think about it. It doesn't make sense.
Making way for the US-based companies to take over the data.
And also, to a large extent, data center is a real estate and power play. Correct. You need to have a real estate to be able to have scale, and you need to have power to be able to run it. Okay, now how many 1 gigawatt stations, data centers are there in India? Bro? At least to my knowledge, zero. Right. You'll top out at say 250 or 300 kV and things like that. And that's the max that you can. I'm not, maybe I stand corrected on some of these things, but to get a gigawatt of power, correct, requires like, can you imagine the power supply for some, when you need to have like a coal-based nuclear power source, right? Fusion is something which the Chinese and the French have not yet perfected. So it's not come to India, right? Correct. So
When you have all those things back, you already.
yeah, hopefully, it's like we have our own internal jokes, but I feel that for product companies, especially in the AI space in India, and who do deep research, correct? I think you will need these micro data centers. I think the government has an ambitious plan of procuring thousands of GPUs, and anyway, NVIDIA's annual level is coming up, so we will know that there's going to be another major technological leap, correct? And India wants to subsidize GPU usage at what, 64 rupees an hour, correct? That is the thing. But I am asking people saying, well, that may be an approach towards availability, correct, and affordability, right? And who are the people who are building these applications, right? People are actually building wrappers, right? Who's actually doing the deep tech, Guru? I mean, isn't it?
Yeah, very less number of research. Amount of research is happening in India, particularly.
Very, very less amount of research. Now, what would you do with a grasshopper scale GPU, and one rack is probably enough to run so many things. I read a report today that India's fastest supercomputer has 800 GPUs in it. Correct. Now that may be older scale, whatever it is. We know we've been to enough stuff to, if you go to a Taiwanese trade show or an Nvidia show, correct, for some of these things, you will have some rack servers, right, fully contained ones that can probably run like quarter of India, isn't it? In terms of just a small rack, it's no longer about like having acres and acres and acres. The computing has reached to such an extent. It's like what, 2 or 3 nanometers, right? Even the CPU sizes, the GPU sizes, and the ability to sort of like collate or meld. The technology has reached a stage where it can, with what GPU, right? I mean, if you look at the grasshopper versions, correct? Could they basically take like two dice and then meld in the GPU, correct? And they have the ability to sort of like really, it's not as simple as just taking these two. Obviously, I'm oversimplifying, but if you really look at the technology and the ability to interconnect all of these things, the ability, to be able to sort of, have the bandwidth in the GPU to process so much, correct? It is decreasing day by day. There have been examples. People say, I can run LLMs, correct? With say so many tokens per second on interconnected Apple Mac Minis, correct? Correct. And we are in the fourth version now, M4 Pros. But the M2 Pro has more bandwidth and more cores for the GPU, correct, than the M4, right? So you'll be looking at that kind of throughput. It's not necessarily like the older generation is bad and therefore cannot provide. It's more in terms of what is the use case, what does it require to run all of these things, and do you require some huge things to be able to do this, right? But what is the use case in India for this? In this particular episode, I seem to have gathered the most for all of these things, but these are all things which I thought that, if I'm doing this, I might as well say it out loudly also, isn't it? Saying today the government calls out for all these people to build like and huge GPU cluster, which is anyway going to get outdated by the time it's going to start like come up through. And then you want to build India-specific LLMs where there's a huge skill deficit for people trying to figure out. When we built QLM, I put out a LinkedIn post saying we were laughed at, Guru. We did not even have the resources, right? But we would sort of like use ingenious methods, putting so many things together to get things running, correct? And that seems to be the real question mark saying, one, are you at a skill level where you can do all of these wonderful things? The answer is absolutely not, correct? Are you at a skill level as a country, correct, to do services? Absolutely, correct. Are you at a skill level to build products? Absolutely not, correct. So I think that sums it up, isn't it, Guru? In fact, when we go on sort of like do stuff internationally, correct? With our innovation, sometimes people are surprised saying, are you in India? Why not come here? Why not move here? All of those things are just sort of like given out. But if you look at most of the companies that exist today, they're just copies of things that have come up.
Yes.
Correct? It's just copies of stuff that has come out. Now, where is the innovation there? Is the innovation in the UI because it looks nicer? My app looks nicer than yours, kind of stuff, which is not innovation at the end of the day, right? Is the innovation in getting things like delivered on time, correct? You've got a huge population which is jobless, correct? But therefore utilizing. But then where is the real Vishweshwaraya moment where you can, build a dam, or you can really think of maybe early 1900s by the British, where the Maharaja of Mysore decided to sort of like give a grant open IISc, or maybe the scientists at ISRO, correct, that really sort of like innovate, correct, to get things done. Maybe not saying that it doesn't exist, maybe in certain portions, correct, where some of these things come up, but can we still do like Coaster, the rocket that comes back and hitches itself to the launch pad? No, we're not there yet, correct? So that requires some amount of innovation, some amount of skilling, some amount of dedication to actually take the country forward as well, correct? The easiest thing is to sort of like leave the country, go outside and try and do something, because you don't need a lot of resources to be able to build, but you certainly at some point, I don't think there has ever, have you ever faced a situation where we could not buy or do something good?
There's always, I think the difference also is in the mindset.
Yeah.
Okay, to build a LLM, we need only big companies like OpenAI or Microsoft or Google, etc. But then came DeepSeek and attracted all the
And also early attempts were made here also saying, you only need like a mini LLM. Why should we need a proper LLM, or why should we do this? We are a services. I'm X company. I've got 3 lakh people doing services. You know the power of AI. I don't need to say more, correct? But the early attempts were made to sort of like also hijack the headlining on things like these as well, correct? It requires a certain amount of also brute sort of brute-headedness, to be able to sort of like say, I'm doing this for whatever it may be, may or may not turn out to be monetarily successful. It may or may not, but it certainly gives you, I think, Guru, can you also say that in the last year we worked on such critical technology that has given us so much happiness, correct, that we actually sat and built this. This can only come from when you actually built something, correct? When you invent something new, when you're not just imported stuff and trying to sell it here. This is not like an import-export business where you import some clothes and try and sell it here, correct? It's not that it's a bad thing, okay? A joke, like very recently, we asked for some Exim Bank support, correct? To name a particular banking institution and the state of affairs, saying, I need some support in this part of the globe because we're doing here, but it usually gets delayed because of the country's tax policies and things like that. So the answer we got back literally was, if you are a chappal manufacturer, we can help you. I'm like, this is the place this is where Made in India currently stands, correct? And this is where the state of affairs is when it comes to innovation. And we don't say this enough, correct? And even at Coco, we strive for, we like, you please innovate. And it's not that we don't have a lot of these things cut out or, built, correct? It's not that you need to use something which is out there, correct? You create yourself, you create your own data centers, and you are able to sort of like be able to do that. But you need to have some critical mass for all these things as well. I'll just say this. Sorry, that's my grouse of the season also, isn't it? I'm sure a lot of founders also feel the same way. What do you think, Guru? What do you think, Riddhi? What?
Mentioned LLM when you were talking, like LLM, using LLM with the minimal resource. Is that realistic? More like, how was it like more realistic using LLM with the minimal resources? We are talking about that LLM has been used with the minimal resources.
You mean building an LLM?
Yeah, building LLM with the minimal resources. Like, how was it more realistic?
So basically, you don't really need a very large number of resources to build a model that can cater to certain specific use cases. Let us say you're only dealing with legal documents, or for example, to talk about what the
Cohen's been our approach as well.
Exactly, correct. So you don't really need a model that conquers the entire world. Just need to be able to understand the documents, try to solve the problems that we are working on. So with respect to resources, you don't really need a great number of resources, but the process itself is quite great. You need to go through the data, correct it probably. It's because garbage in, garbage out. You have to clean it properly. You have to ensure that the document formatting is proper, etc. And then you need to train it. So we need some amount of GPU power to be able to train a model that does a decent job at giving you the right responses. Yeah.
So just to add that, we've taken an approach where we have specialist data sets. Like today, and some of these can be accessed as demo ones. Like we have all India Supreme Court cases.
Right.
We have legislation, correct? We have tax boards, criminal boards, things like these that you can use to query very specific data sets, correct? And some of these come together, let us say, but to create a mini language model for a very specific task that you can potentially sort of like deploy on edge devices and things like these. Your iPhone 15 is quite capable of running some of these things as well, right? It's got enough computational power. Not that you lack any of these things today. It's just the use case, correct? And also, when a lot of these things come up and you have a large enough data set, and you also need to sort of, when you train an LLM, you will need a combination of real data, synthetic data, and there are synthetic LLMs on. It's also called as, internally call it a bullshit LLM, because it's like completely synthetic data, correct? You're just generating random numbers, correct, for some of these things, right? So, and it's so when you reach the scale, when you have a language model where you want it to sort of train, I'll give an example, correct? Let us say you have in India, you have a backlog of millions of cases. People avoid court, correct? For what reason, Guru? You go there until you file when you are 20 and you get out when you are 60. I'm saying this if you're lucky, correct? There are cases running for tens of years with no, it's because of a lack of trained cadre, lack of, in the sense that the number of judges may not be sufficient for the population, correct? And, we follow a procedure which is not necessarily Indian, it's anglicized because we adopted a process when we were, when we were colonized, right? Or we were, for hundreds of years, correct? So there's a process that has come into this, which may not necessarily actually match the Indian ethos as well, correct? But let us say that you've got judgments or the thinking of 200 different judges over the last 200 years, correct? And you want to resolve this issue of cases, correct? We can train the LLM exactly sort of like analyze cases the way, depending on the genre and other things, right? Be able to do this so that, the resolution, correct, for a case can come in a format, where, you may have a sitting judge or someone else who looks at it and is able to pass, the process, the documentation, if it is streamlined, and, you can have resolution in a matter of days versus 50, 60 years, right? So that is my thinking on this. But, that is the ingenuity, and that is the deep thought that is required for all of these things as well. I think as Coco, we are in a position to execute some of these things as well, but it also requires, like, is there political will to do this? Is there technological skill? And, oh, I'm evaluated by an LLM, can I, at the end of the day, you need a resolution. It is not necessarily a mediation that you require for some of these things as well. That's my thought process. Long-winded.
Yeah, in addition, there might be a few other limitations to local models as with respect to AN, the output, full window. How much you can actually get as an output cannot be. So if you are building smaller models, will be getting smaller outputs. Well, it may not be able to. That's one of the limitations that might be there for models that are.
Yeah, so I'll give an example. Today, your judgments, just to add, is like 20, 25 pages long. The reason being, you have to, justice has to be seen fair and not just sort of like be fair, right? So when you go through law school, some of these things come up where you have to be seen to be fair as well, correct? Like if the police intervene in a conflict, they are not going to immediately take sides. Have you noticed this? Because the police has to sort of like appear at least to be fair. They will never take sides immediately. And it has a process of its own, correct? So similarly on this. So one is, when you're doing this data, it has to be clear of biases. India has a history where judges have been biased. Okay. You have judgments either which way and across, for whatever it is. If you put an LLM through a graphing program and see, and today we can map out, if you go before which judge, what is it that you can expect as a result, right? In that technology is available today. It does not require you. And that's how some of the funds and litigation funds that invest use this technology to figure out whether, they stand a chance if they pick up a piece of litigation, correct, and run it on its own or on its course, correct. So this technology is available, but we are just saying that access to justice has to be cheap. You have to solve major issues, correct? There is the backlog of cases. And at the end, you want somebody with an enforceable, correct? and definitive. You won't want something that can on for 50 years, correct? And you're scared to go to the court. And anyway, this has been the problem for the last 100 years, correct? Now you have a real thing, deep technology where you can solve some of these things. You have commercial dispute. To go to court, and I called to the DSP say, okay, I want to be very, for all of these things, that can be done very, very quickly. Traffic fines. No, a traffic fines forward is very, 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 very good. Now people prefer to pay fines to the government rather than get litigate a traffic fine thing. So unfair and convenient locking my bike up or car up or whatever the case is. When there is no road and you are forced to park there, you cannot come and lock it up. It's fair. So these are things that require a fundamental outlook. I would think that AI in India is fantastically legal, is fantastic. Is it you? Right. You are able to solve so many things, so many inefficiencies. And one of the things that also Kriti, when you use this, I don't know, clear it up, guys. AI doesn't take a side. We were on a demo recently, not very long ago, where it basically said stuff on the financial side, where I would have visited. That it's like it's the most straightforward of things, it's emotionless as well. But at the end of the day, it's also going to tell you exactly what it thinks, and it never sort of, that's our original thinking. Will we get there is another thing altogether, correct? This can be used as an exploitative technology, or it can use a transformational technology, like any piece of technology that you have, right? At this point, the country is subject to exploitative technology, like dark stores, dark pricing, dark this, dark that. You've got competition commission coming in and doing all of these things. It's about time to really think about it as transformative technology, and we are very specific to India about this. And yes, I feel that I'm entitled to speak on some of these things as a practitioner as well, correct? And these are things that require you to sort of, I would think that I would use this at every village level, taluk level, district level, correct?
Like most of the cases can just be solved in 2 days, basically.
Yeah, it's like, there's an episode, my favorite series is Star Trek. Grow up. There's one episode there in the original series called Blink of an Eye, correct? You can't see. They're accelerated humans, correct? And they will do things without you being able to sort of like see them, correct? So, it ends in a bad way in that particular episode, in the sense that people figure out, the original crew figures out that people are accelerated and they want to take on whatever those issues are. But in the wake of an eye, this was started. So that is an apt thing, for solving, say, the case log in India, correct? No other country has this dubious distinction of having billion population and billions of unsolved cases, backlog, and we should do it up to it, So anyway, right.
Adding on to that, so I have one question to ask. What do you think about what's your take on that? The perplexity and the OpenAI thing for $200. What's your take on this side?
Oh, yeah. What do you think, Guru?
Yes, first of all, it's too expensive. And with DeepSeek coming in,
So I see Perplexity was created as an alternative to Google, correct? But still relies on Google search results to be able to give you, or maybe Bing and how DeepSeek to be able to sort of like give you. What it does is, if you run a query, this is my limited understanding, and the guy behind it is from IIT Madras, so you should clarify it on stage, but it'll run 20 different queries and then wait it out, probably it has its own system of weights and biases, do all of these things, and then gives you a summary. I've used it. I've found, I have my own biases as well as to what my favorites are, correct, for all of these things. But, as a replacement to Google, you need to have a Google kind of search capability, correct? Even today, the default is still Google, and it may take it's like receiving an email which looks like an essay versus receiving an email that is like one sentence long. My bias is to look at one sentence long, not like an essay. So this is how it looks like. When it comes to the O3 research, it's extremely priced, $200 to do PhD level kind of stuff. So is PhD going to start tomorrow? I don't know the answer. I've tried out some of the reasoning models to repeatedly question itself to give, I've given it some very esoteric queries, and I've given it some very pointed queries. The pointed queries actually come out right. The philosophical and like what is the nature of the universe kind of question, it is not 42. If you remember the Hitchhiker's Guide, correct? Definitely not. Even there, it had deep thought, correct? So DeepSeek is like deep thought, it would give. I don't think that these are competing, but it's too expensive. If you're looking at a place like India for some of these things, I don't think so. And I don't think the prime minister needs to go out to sort of like get some of these technologies, correct? You should look at what's homegrown first, correct, to do all of these things as well. And necessarily homegrown technologies have grown with the limitations of the place as well, correct? So India is at a fantastic stage where it can really grow some of these companies and these technologies, and it has a wide enough implication sort on all these things as well. But does perplexity or O3 make a difference in India? I'm not particularly sure. What do you think, Guru?
Oh, it will not many people have that much money to spend on a monthly basis. Okay. If you want to do some research, kind of, you generally spend 6 months or 1 year on doing research on a topic randomly, and something like this comes up, maybe it will make it faster. But more important for researchers is the effort that is involved in performing it, so that it drives the thought process, it refines the ideas, etc. Okay, there are two different conflicting comments here.
Yeah, it's like also the training given in schools, right? It's like, even schools today, in the higher levels, correct, still teach, they don't teach Python, or they may teach Python, but it's more Java based than anything else, correct? In reality, it's just the opposite in the real world, isn't it? So, I think there is also a fundamental disconnect somewhere that needs to be. I mean, there are so many things that we can keep going on, but do those things really matter in India at this point in time? Probably not. If you really ask me, right? India has some very specific, use cases as well, and the services mindset certainly does not also help with product innovation. And product innovation, the copying is treated as product innovation to a large extent, correct? Actual innovation, I'm sure it does, but there's a lot of,
And
not too many, correct? So, and things like that. As an example, you remember, Guru, sometime back, they built a new rocket motor, correct, which actually flew as well, based on some newer technologies than anything else. I forget the name of the company, correct? That was pure innovation, yeah. And that was like, come on.
3D printed model.
Oh yeah, 3D printed module, which even I think ISRO had not yet gotten to that state as yet, correct? And things like that. Some of those fundamental, I'm not saying no research gets done, or it's only but on AI, you can hand count, who are the guys who are actually doing deep research in India, correct? So I think that's where things are. But go on, Kriti, hey.
So, one last question before we wrap up, sir. What is this Kumbhakarna movement? People are talking about this. What is it? What exactly that means, sir?
Let me rephrase that question. Okay, now till now you've heard about what Chetan thinks or what Guru thinks and things like that, right? Now you are exposed to AI right from right from college onwards, correct? What do you think really? I mean, how do you use AI? Let me ask.
So basically, when as we have just passed, not really passed out, but as we, assignment, when they give the assignment, we just go the questions and we just get the answers. We are not like putting our efforts to literally go through the books and get the answers. So it's better to read that way. And also PDFs, and there's a thing in AI also where you put up a PDF and you get all the answers like related to the poll. Like you need not read the whole 30 pages. So it's like time consuming will be less again. So this is where we are using like
So, as an example, for this, right, the future generation looks at times it's not necessary for you to learn everything, and then because each generation builds on top of the other, right? If you go back and try and build the Saturn rocket today, they don't even have the tools and dice, correct? And they don't even can you use that thing what they used group that before calculators came into thing? I don't know. No, they use some scale or so. I forget.
Yeah.
I
factor and
no. They have this, to calculate log tables, right? They don't do the anyway. Sorry, now look, even we don't remember some of these things, correct? Even though it may have been like a generation or two away, and you are at least 5 generations away or 4 generations away, correct? So things like these, why we say this is it's not necessary for you to actually you have a tool like this that remembers how things were done, correct? And then you have the tool to sort of look back, correct, and actually learn how it could be done if necessary and things like that. It's more of a memory tool, enhanced memory tool as well, correct? We lost the art in India to manufacture mud buildings as an example, right, which existed like 100 years before, correct? Or for that matter, making iron, which does not toxical of an alloy or whatever the case is, right? Use the iron pillar as an example, or the ability to create the stone temples in Karnataka, correct? You lost all that, but you have the ability now to store all of that generational stuff going forward, correct? So that means that you don't need to necessarily know Pythagoras theorem, correct? You should only know that, at the end of the day, you can tap into something that can utilize that. So you should have the broad aspects of it. That's how exactly you should be using this, correct? It's not possible to download an entire LLM.
basically we need not spend that 15 or like if for example if you have a video or from 15 minutes of and we just put it on into some various boards or something we tell it to
And it's not necessary to go through like 22, 23 years of education, correct?
yes.
I think that seriously needs to get crunched. That's on stage as well, correct? To be able to say, you have a lot more. I mean, you may lack the experience, but that doesn't mean that you cannot tap into a higher experience thing, correct? Also, the way that generations are going to utilize this is to build stuff, correct, which would never have been attempted before, correct? At the end of the day, correct? If you are able to review a document in seconds versus you send it to email somebody, have somebody look into it, go through it, send you their comments with their biases and whatever it is, right? So it takes a lot of time, right? So you don't need some of those things anymore. And if you want to skill yourself, correct, you should be skilled in machine learning, as an example, because you can train models to do exactly what it is, right? You think that auto rickshaws, as is, which have existed for 75 years, will continue to be driven by humans in another 10 years? You got the technology today to do autonomous, like the way Tesla does, right? It's done as a combination of real time. Yeah, and because the technology is also improved, because you can do all the processing in real time, you don't need necessarily a cloud connection to do all of these things. You don't. So these are all the things, right, that you can do. Yeah,
One click then on this parking thing as well.
yeah, and wouldn't you like a driverless auto rickshaw?
Yeah.
What do you think, Guru? I for one, yeah. Now, can I account for all the auto rickshaw drivers who will gang up and say this is the wrong thing? I need a job for this because they're not prepped for this? Probably not. It's like the bank employees who resisted computerization, and today it turns out that the bank is the computer, correct? So, it is like that. So I'm saying, and isn't a phone now? The bank is a phone, at the end of the day, for all of these things. So, I mean, it's more of a philosophical discussion of human creativity and all of these things, but also human creativity is a subject of inherent bias, isn't it? Also, very good. Can you go out to the environment?
Your experiences actually they affect our intelligence.
Exactly. So it's a subject matter of your learning, and it comes with its own because you are also biological by nature, that means that, you will also have a set of survival things kicking in, correct? It's not necessarily always going to be, if you look at system architecture, at the latest stage of how can evolve beyond with all of these things. That's another thing which that's subject matter for another discussion. I think we've had some thoughts in that as well about how these evolve.
You can have
So like getting involved thinking, oh, I need all these GPUs, and suddenly I have a lot of intellectual man, horsepower, correct, to be able to sort of this the on term horsepower is itself like outdated, correct? So, but anyways, and this you don't have the intellectual man or woman power today because of lack of skills. No. But that's the Kumbhakarna moment where they wake up and figure out, saying that the rest of the world is sort of like overtaken us.
mindset.
And I'm still the services economy of 50, 70 years back. And I've not done anything to encourage innovation, correct? And that's the subject matter of so many other things, which is beyond the scope of this. But the Kumbhakarna moment is when the government is now inviting companies, right? Basically say create LLMs for us. Now that is not followed by some deep thought as to what you will do with those LLMs in the first place, correct? The use when you're building something, you need to have like an end goal in mind. We've seen that go. We call it the Kumbhakarna moment because in the Ramayana, correct, you have Kumbhakarna who would speak for how many years at a time, 12 years at a time or something, right? And you would wake up for 12 years and sleep for 12 years. Okay, and during that time, so many events would have changed, correct? That he was always lagging mad by 12 years, correct? That looks like the current state of affairs. And it's always been up to the private sector to take things forward. But, it's also a good thing that the Kumbhakarna has been woken up. Suddenly, out of all of these things, like handing out freebies and other things, suddenly people figure out that going forward, it's going to become an existential issue of whether people are going to have the necessary skills of their jobs to be able to do all of these things. But from a technology perspective, at least they've woken up and said, okay, we want to do all of these things as well, correct? So I think it's a good step that they've taken. And hopefully, they will sort of like look into growing some of these things, which should have been done a long time back, correct? And in our own experience, when we tried to explain our company and AI to a lot of people as we were growing, and still are, correct? People don't understand or are at a skill level where they can really see how things can move, correct? If you have to really spend time, with them. And then suddenly it becomes like, oh, I'm going to lose my job. So I'm going to block this, correct? But I want my son or daughter to go abroad and work in Microsoft and make a lot of money. Now that conundrum has not been solved, as that has not changed. All of that is going to stop. I think it's about time sort of like focus on building apps, on using AI, on locally grown AI to make sense, correct? To do this. Now, do you need a Mac to do? Do you think that AI today, correct? How long do you think it's going to take before my phone can talk to his phone and, basically sort of exchange money, data, whatever it is that is necessary? You don't need a central plan for any of these things. You don't need, at some point in time, there's a need for growing decentralization. Luckily for us, our central bank introduced the cryptocurrency equivalent of central bank. But where are the use cases? Like, this is what we are saying, correct? You may introduce some forward thinking there, but it's not being taken by people because there's a lack of exposure and skill level. Now, this can seems controversial, but this is where it is, and it's not going to change overnight. It may change with some generational thinking and saying, okay, we are doing this to solve real issues, correct? But is it sufficient for me to sit today and say, I want to create a new LLM for India and then do what? Without having an end goal in mind, correct? I think this is where the gap is, correct? And if you have civil engineers who want to sort of like become testers, and if you have structural engineers wanting to do software, then you know that there's a real services element which has really taken the economy in a very, very wrong direction. Correct. So these are all things that we can talk about. People know but cannot solve. But with AI, you stand to have a real chance, isn't it? That is the major. That's the way to adopt things. Um, but thanks. As I said once again, this has been like a monologue because there are a lot of things that we wanted to cover, and a lot of the products that we mentioned, where I need to sort of like give some more clarity and things like that as well. Thanks, Kriti, for moderating this long session. Also, Guru, okay, for this and for the team for getting this together.
Thanks for breaking it down. So both of you, like Chetan and Noor. Like it was really insightful talking to you guys.
Yeah. The LLM is never going to call you sir. Okay, on madam. Also, you can really to tell it, call you that, but that's an example of how it can be done. But thank you. Thanks so much.